Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. So in this video, I'm going to have myself a little bit of a rant here. We call them Roy Rants here on the channel. If you're new here, this may or may not be your type of video. There's plenty of tutorial videos for you to go and enjoy, but this one's going to be a bit of a discussion about pushing material to its limits. So recently I got into a bit of an online squabble that unfortunately I ended up eventually having to block the person because they were not getting off the subject. I tried to take and explain things to them very cordial, and it just didn't happen this time around. They got me a little bit flustered, and well, one thing led to another. I used that all-powerful block button on my end, and I had to end the conversation there. But what the whole tussle was about was a recent video where I had made a forge weld, I had made a cleft weld or a bird's mouth weld where you just you weld, sandwich some material in between another piece of material from splitting the end of the bar and welding it in. I did not dress the toes of the scarf of my weld because I was using this as a teaching aid for a future class that I was teaching that was going to be a 3-day forge welding intensive class, and I wanted to take and use it as an example piece and show some of the reasons why you want to take and do things like thin the toes of your scarf. The reason why, you want to blend in the toes of your scarves, and to take and illustrate the two pieces becoming one in that juncture. And trying to explain that, again, that's one of those difficult things to convey sometimes, is my purposing behind certain things. This individual ended up just getting insulting about it and saying I just can't weld to save my life and I can't perform those types of welds. Anyhow, let's break it down to what the main argument was. The main argument was if you put it in the vise and you take that weld and you were to bend on it like that, or you were whack it with a hammer, it'd break right open. And that is a completely ignorant thing for you to take and be doing. If you want to take and say a knife, for instance, you want to take one of your most favorite little knives that you ever made and you want to stick it in the vise and you want to just snap the thing in two, that's fine. You can do that if that makes you feel better about yourself, or somehow that it proves to your own ego that you can somehow make a blade that can bend at a 90-degree angle that it was never intended or designed to do in the first place. Go right ahead. But that is my point. There are things that you make in the blacksmithing field, whether it be in knife work or it be in ornamental work, that the piece needs to be structurally sound for its intended use or its purpose. So if you're going to take and do things like, hey guys, look at me, I can weld this, look, I can hang from it, and it doesn't break. Okay, great. You're going to have about a 50-50 success rate on that based upon what type of weld you used and if it was ever really going to be used for that intended purpose. Good example of this. I've made a most recent video where I did a butt weld. It was just taking the end of a bar and butt welding it into another piece. That is a very weak joint. That's not the greatest welded joint ever, but it can be very handy to take and have that type of welded joint for specific forging operations or prep work for other things. It's kind of like a weld you would make when you have no other choice, when something didn't quite get in there right and you just needed to make an added bar in that section of a piece of gate or grill, which is poor planning, but say, hey, things happen, you're trying to take and get that weld in there and lengthen a bit of bar. That is fine, but it is not the most structurally sound forge weld in the world. So if you want to take and hang from the side of a cliff on a butt welded joint, it was nice knowing you, pal. Again, you might want to focus on doing something that has a little bit more welding work and maybe even shove a few rivets through the welded joint as well, just to give yourself that little bit of extra security if you're going to hang from the side of a mountainside anytime soon. So a lot of the work that I do is based upon doing ornamental work. I do ornamental things. That means they are pretty things. These are not mechanical or function-based things. Now you may say, okay, well that's a great cop-out. You can't weld anything that matters. Well, This hammer here has been in use and in service for the last 6 years now, and this is a piece of wrought iron with two 1045 steel faces welded in, and this has seen literally hundreds of thousands of hammer blows and strikes, and my welds have not popped loose yet. So therefore, yes, you can make welds that are mechanical, that are critical, that do need to take and keep together, but there are a lot of welds out there in the blacksmithing field that are not crucial welds. They are simply just to lengthen a bar or to make a traditional joint that needs to be made. So with that being said, taking something in like a forge weld that you've just made and trying to destroy that weld proves nothing. I can take a piece of bar stock fresh from the factory like what you see here. This is a piece of 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 or 6 mil by whatever that is. Let's just call it 30 mil. We'll just call it that in width. It can be whatever you want. And in this way and in this orientation, it is very strong and robust. You couldn't bend this to take and save your life. But in this orientation, you can flex it quite a bit. And oh, look, superhuman strength. There you go. Oh, that must be faulty steel from the manufacturer. I made it do something that it was never designed to do. It was never designed to take and have strength in this orientation. It was designed to have strength in this orientation and be used in projects that it needed that strength in the correct orientation. It was never meant to take and be bent around on by hand, by cold, in the most weak way possible. It was not designed to do that. So taking a blade, sticking it under your boot, and giving the handle a good snap is not going to take and prove anything other than you are a moron that just broke a blade. It proves your own strength and your own reluctancy to learn that there are things that you use stuff for and there's things that you don't use stuff for. If you make a cleft weld, it's most likely nowadays going to be used in something like the edge of an axe, which is always taking front impact. So that means it's only going to be driving that bit deeper into the weld. So if the weld did not take all the way across your welded planes, most likely in your lifetime, you will never see a failure at that point. However, if your welds did not take and you're putting something like that, very arrogantly so, into something that is going to be under sidewards force, or it's going to be pulled apart in this direction, like you're going to use it in the event of like a tow chain or something like that, and that weld is not mechanically sound, you could end up injuring yourself or somebody else. And so you need to think that through when you make those welds and those processes. The last bit of this little rant, and this is where I'm going to leave it for you, the last little bit of this, the toes of the scarf, and I'm going to be very clear about this. The toes of the scarf of the weld have nothing to do with the structural capabilities of the weld. They have nothing to do with it. For example, the toes need to get blended in order for it to look like a good weld. But if you have too thick of a toe, you can oftentimes file that toe off and make it disappear, blend it right back into the steel with a file or a grinder, and you never know that where the scarf of that weld was. It takes a lot more skill and a degree of patience to really fully blend in that scarf with just welding with hammer blows and taking the right amount of time. And there's a couple tricks to that I'll get into at a later date, but that does not dictate the structural concerns of the welds. It does not dictate the performance. The performance of that weld is how well the two welding planes had fused themselves together. If you had slag or oxygen too much in there that got scale between your welding planes and they did not connect, then that's a clear problem. But the toes themselves do not present an issue in the effect in the effect of the piece being welded. Now, where the toes do create an issue is if you leave yourself too thick of a toe in a scarf, and that's the little sharp part that comes down that overlaps where you lap the two together if you're doing like a lap weld. If that toe is too thick and you're welding it in, it will create what they call a shear plane, and when things are in a shear plane, they're not in a welding plane, and therefore you are creating a weakened section of material. Mark Asbury has a wonderful video out on forge welding theory on this on YouTube. I believe it's still made public. If I can find that, I'll link up to it right here. You can go check that out. He explains the difference between welding planes and shear planes very, very exquisitely well, easy to follow, and you know, again, he's a master smith, so you should definitely go check him out. But that's where I'm going to leave you. If you're going to push material to its absolute limit, just so for your own ego to be satisfied, you go right ahead. You're really not proving anything about your own smithing capabilities. What you're doing is you're proving that your material or whatever it is that you're making will fail if it is not used in accordance to its designed purpose. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video somewhat. I'm sure there's plenty of people, those serial dislikers of my channel, that are hitting that thumbs down button right now. God love you all. You go slither back under those rocks where you belong. And with the rest of the channel, the people that actually love this channel and that support us on a daily basis, God bless you, and you all have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you on the next one.